After a very long ride and some struggles with parking, Derek had to resort to circling like a vulture until a spot opened up. You and Derek were strolling under a wide blue sky into the bustling boardwalk. The boardwalk amusement park was as dizzying and dazzling as it was 10 years ago. Music was playing from storefronts, screams blared out at the peaks of the coaster, and crowds of people were laughing and talking from all sides. You knew as soon as the scent of the sea and fried foods struck your senses that this was the right call for your last stop on your trip with Derek. At your side, Derek spoke, soft and sentimental. "We made it. Took us long enough." He didn't say more, though you felt his knuckles brush against your arm inquiringly. You looped your arm around his. They linked together perfectly. Now you wouldn't get lost and would be much happier. Together you stepped further down the path. For a place that felt so alive, it was almost uncanny how little had changed over the years. The bike rental store was there, though they also offered shiny new electric scooters. There were still vibrant stalls offering a variety of fair foods, and the two big rides, the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel, continued to tower above the bustling crowds. You were sure of one difference without needing to see it. The face painting counter would have a total stranger running it. Xavier had moved on to decorating cakes rather than children's cheeks. Still, being there was a time machine to a summer long gone. You and Derek were two teens once again. He got your attention with enough boyish excitement to confirm it.
So?
"What do you want to do while we can? We'll have to leave pretty early to make it back for the farewell dinner. But we can ride the rides, grab a treat, browse some stores, or hell, we could rent our own bikes if you want." You were pulled into an even closer, cuddlier position against Derek. His pure enthusiasm made frowns outright impossible. You chuckled, the joy vibrating through you coming out. Your first time at the boardwalk was an experience. It was such a huge trip. Both of your parents and siblings had been there, but separated into two groups. For better and for worse, you went all across the very boards currently under your feet. Meanwhile, the adults hadn't had their heels on the floor. They were fit into pedals. The shock you felt learning they'd gone off on bikes without a care in the world was as fresh as ever in your mind, and that wasn't all that lingered within you. Important decisions about face paintings, Nico being carried around like a sack of potatoes, snacks on the beach as the sun set, and the Ferris wheel. Viewing it not only in hindsight, but as an adult made the moments even more significant. They were precious. You'd never experience your first time here again, or what it was like to be 13 when the world was only beginning to open up wide. Even so, your thoughts weren't completely tinged in rose. A fuzzy blanket of nostalgia couldn't make you forget how it almost wasn't a nice time, how it only got to stay good because one person cared enough to make certain it did. How Derek Suarez cared more for others than himself. That remained sparkly true about him more than a decade later. For the brief time he'd been in the area, and he gladly let Nicholas direct the activity multiple times, and did his best to not let George feel left out. Derek gave up going to the water park so he could attend a business luncheon on his father's behalf. Along with looking out for his own family, he never let that supersede your comfort or wants, and he accommodated your sister too, after he put in all the effort to help her come see everyone. You're sure he had fun being a part of the misadventures, but most times he's been a passenger in the exploits, despite having to be the person who drove everyone else. That answered Derek's question for you. I think that you shouldn't ask me and what I think. This is your day to enjoy the boardwalk after spending your whole life making sure everyone else had fun here. Derek's grin collapsed one open. A crease formed in his brows. He was stunned and very touched. While the appreciation was unmistakable, he hesitated to accept such an offer. You don't have to do that. It's your vacation, and you've missed out on stuff too. You weren't surprised by the response, but it didn't play like a rejection. You only needed some extra encouragement, like a kid who thought it was bad to open a present before his birthday, even if he got permission from the giver. And it's your vacation too, a working vacation, but still. You're my boyfriend. It's only fair that I get to be the one who puts you first sometimes. Eye contact temporarily failed him. Derek watched his own foot scuff at the spot where one slab of wood met another. A downturned face didn't hide the old wide smile across it. Thanks, Faye. Don't thank me yet. Have some fun first. Gradually, his normal confidence returned. It wasn't a mistake. He wasn't doing something wrong. He could simply enjoy himself, and he would. Okay then, if you're positive, sure. Wanna get our faces painted? We've gotta start the day right. Yeah, you laughed. Derek thrust, Derek, Derek thrust his free hand ahead of you. It wasn't entirely in the right direction of the face painting style because you weren't facing that way, but you got the idea.
Nice.
I'm gonna get whatever I want. It could be anything. The sky's the limit. The cheer in his voice and the shimmer in his eyes was better than any thrill the boardwalk could have offered. You almost had to feel guilty yourself. He'd done you another favor by allowing you to have to be the one who did him a favor. That tended to be the way it went. You weren't complaining about that particular dynamic. Hey, you getting one? Of course. Cool. With no time to lose and a plan in mind, you and Derek went to the old face painting stand with the new artist. Welcome. I've got a free spot if you see something you like. The painter was far less glamorous than Xavier, but no less friendly or worse at their job. If the new example photos were to be believed, They had their own flair in the strokes and choice of color. You ushered Derek into the seat. It was his day, and for once, he was going to go first. After you. He appreciatively obliged, strutted ahead, and hopped up onto the raised chair. Derek had no embarrassment over being an adult at a face painting stall. It was nice to see. Oh, excellent. What can I get you? Derek took a polite glance at the offered styles on display, though didn't need any time to decide. How about a shooting star? Good choice. The artist wasn't simply being polite. Well, they might have been, but shouldn't if they were. Derek beamed like a star himself. Nothing could have fit better. Taking it from point to point before attaching a long tail, soon Derek's cheek was emblazoned with a bright star, streaking across his face. But they hadn't finished it. The stall had upped its production value since you were last there. The artist added a finishing touch of glitter to the centerpiece and painted sparkles over the basic tail.
Whoa!
It was a pleasant surprise for Derek as well. He'd been sure of what he was getting and ended up with more. Hopefully that would be a pattern of things to come. Thank you. Derek shook the hand of the artisan vigorously before bounding out of the chair to show you. Check it out. Not bad, huh?
Man.
Honestly, I always thought the shooting star was the coolest. It has the most going on out of any of the options, but it's not exactly Neko style. It's a perfect fit. He let out a tiny laugh while only barely stopping himself from scratching his freshly painted cheek. You're sweet, thanks. But he twisted on his heels and took 2 steps backwards. The front of the stall was clear, and Derek was in place to keep watch. Your turn. Cool. You walked under the large umbrella that covered the stall and settled into the paint-splattered seat. Hello, what can I give you? It was a difficult question, but after some serious soul-searching, you said, I want a shooting star too. Of course, you'll be a wonderful pair. For the second time, at least, with you and Derek, it might have been their dozenth for the day the painter put their talent into action. You'd forgotten how thickly bristles felt being drawn on your skin. You wondered how you managed to stay still for this in the past, or how even younger kids did it. It might be because the process wasn't too long. You were in expert hands, while you'd been distracted by the unusual sensation they had finished. Your shooting star was topped off with a dash of glitter, and the piece was complete. You smiled into the mirror, and the artist angled at you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. When you rejoined Derek outside of the stall, he admired the charming composition. It got a thumbs up from him. That's awesome. You paid the artist for their work, just you, since you were covering Derek, and he certainly wasn't paying for you. And then it was back into the thick of the park. Derek was on his way, and you were relieved to have him directing the course without a reminder to do so. Since we're here, we've got to ride the roller coaster. Then what are we waiting? Then what are we waiting for? Come on. All right. Mutual thrill propelled you through the crowd, flying past the souvenir shops and food stands so fast you could imagine yourself already on the coaster. The line was wrapped around the whole base of the coaster, but neither of you intended to give up. You could be patient for your reward, though patient didn't mean calm. Derek restlessly bounced from heel to toe and repeatedly clasped and unclasped his hands, sometimes shaking his finger out. His behavior was more appropriate for someone about to jump into a big game they'd been training all their life for. But Derek had already gone through that kind of experience for real, so it was fitting for him. The thick row of people filed forward at the gradual pace. Derek shot out eager chatter when he caught the move. He held on his high spirits the whole while, and eventually he reached the boarding platform. Finally, the suspense of waiting to be on the ride was replaced with the anticipation of the drop. You'd forgotten a middle spot in the coaster, though with a bias towards the front. It was good with Derek, and that was good with you. Together you piled in for the ride and closed the safety bar over your laps. A check of all cars was performed as usual, and when the clear was given, the wheels cranked ahead. It pulled higher and higher to the peak of the man-made wood mountain, until without warning, the coaster careened over the other side. Derek hollered loud enough to hear over the shouts of everyone else, plus the clattering car and your teeth clattering in your head. You zoomed through twists and turns, being jostled around like you were tossed into the flammable dryer. And then it was over. You jerked forward and the car's speed decreased significantly to the last leg. Once the car cranked to the crawl and rolled into the station, you headed across the exit on the other side, making sure not to leave anything behind. All the fellow riders went down the path in the group. Derek was out of breath and buzzing with energy. You were in a similar state. After ruffling his already completely tousled hair, Derek sighed happily. That was great. Yeah. We began to drift over the boards again, heading nowhere but encouraged forward by the tide of park-goers coming through. You couldn't remember when it happened, but Derek's hand found yours. He swung your arms back and forth between you. He grinned over at you as sweet as a mouthful of cotton candy. What do you want to do next? Wait, no. What do you want to do next, right? Good job. It's all up to you still. Derek and you joined in the laughter, filling the park. Force of habit. Don't worry, I can keep reminding you. It's Derek's Day. Derek's Day, huh? I like the sound of that. He cast his focus up to the sky. With his free hand, Derek traced the edges of his jaw using his thumb and pointer finger. It reminded you of the way Mr. Suarez would stroke his beard thoughtfully and respectably. Derek was missing the facial hair, but the effect was the same. What does Derek Suarez want to do? We've hit the roller coaster and face painting stall. I'm not huge on the refreshments here, honestly. They've got bikes and the scooters, but you can do that almost anywhere. On top of that, time's running out before we have to leave. So, up next is the Ferris wheel. We've gotta do that before we go. Yeah, time is literally end it off on the high point.
Awesome.
Alright, let's go. Derek glanced around to get the layoff of the land. You'd wandered far from the roller coaster and entirely lost touch with where you stood in the park. But your new target was the tallest structure 4 miles around. There was no problem in determining a path towards it. Together you made another crossing of the boardwalk. The line for the Ferris wheel wasn't as jam-packed as the first ride you'd stopped at. Far more guests could fit at a time, and it was simply less of a draw to the high-energy guests attending that park. You couldn't get on immediately, but the wait wouldn't take long. Derek's attitude standing there was in stark contrast to how he behaved on the creeping crawl up to the coaster. His feet were firm on the ground. A ride attendee got the door for both of you. That didn't mean you couldn't add your own touch of cordialness. Please, you first. How
Thanks.
kind. He promptly climbed in. You carefully got up the 2 steps into the car after. Derek sat on the right bench, the same side he picked the last time you were there. You sat on the bench next to Derek. Derek squished his shoulders up around the sides of his face in childlike excitement and welcomed you to the seat with a grin. He put out an OK sign for attendant. Then the employee closed the tiny elevated room. You were fully encased inside. It muffled the raucousness so much you could believe the entire world had suddenly faded away. Glancing out the window showed that all was well. The car rocked forward and you watched as the ground grew further away. A warm hand enveloped yours. It was nice. You and Derek were completely unreachable there. For the duration of the ride, it was only you and him. That was freeing in a way. Derek seemed to think so much. Derek seemed to think so too. Because it got him to talk without reservation. I know we didn't get to do all that much here. We're finishing up and the sun hasn't even started to set. But even still, this has been the best ride to the boardwalk I've had in years. He poked at a small chunk of glitter on his cheek that clumped together and stuck out from the rest. I hope you know I really appreciate it. You're always looking out for me. I'm happy to. The Ferris wheel continued to go round on its set, unchanging path, always forward, never back. Even in the brightest of the summer day, A shadow fell over Derek's face.
Well,
Well, you succeeded in making me happy. Is it alright to ask if you had fun too? Of course, any time with Derek is a good time. That's good to know. His gaze dropped, and his voice was low, heavy with the weight of emotional strain.
thank
Thanks
you.
to you, I finally got to feel like I did when I was a kid for a little while. That means a lot. It's what I've been chasing since I got here. The big park, all dark and empty, Derek's pained confession, the scene all flashed through your mind. His words rung out, how he felt he'd lost so much and could never get it back. Maybe that wasn't entirely true after all. The soft smile on his face was exactly the same as the boy you once knew. Hey, remember that time you stayed over at my place and we camped out in the living room? We talked about the future and our dreams. The Father's Day thing might have been more of a bombshell, but I haven't forgotten the rest of that adventure. Yeah, same. We had such grand plans a decade ago, huh?
Oh man,
Now we're here, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Derek pressed himself into the heavy metal wall behind the seat and slumped down it. I bet my 13-year-old self would have demanded a refund if he'd called a psychic and they told him what direction his life was gonna go in and that it would still lead to getting together with you. That's obviously made up. Come on, Derek. Everyone knows you're too polite to ask for your money back. You're right, but I would have thought about it. I'd have made a great speech in my head about how it's only fair to not have to pay for a reading like that. Derek's voice faded out, replaced by the sound of his fingers tapping against the seat. One after another, they played a rapid beat like the fluttering of a heart.
this sucks.
Sucks that there's no way to actually know what's gonna happen in the future, huh?
Forget it.
At least today was fun. A good break from having to be grown-ups. Thanks again for letting me do this. You wanted to appreciate that you had the chance to come here for a short trip. Nothing could last forever, and you had a great run. It's nothing. He grinned, staring at you head on. Hey, you should come by again sometime, whenever you want to, or can. Anyway, whenever? You are sure about that? Yup,
Leave
it's
it to
my
me.
apartment. I'm an adult, and I can say that Faye Madison is allowed to visit all the time. He declared it proudly with a false air of haughtiness. If his pitch had been a little higher, the statement would have been a fairly accurate imitation of Liz. It was all more than a little silly, but the smile growing on your face stopped short of becoming full. Derek's bald face confidence was only pretend. Regret remained hidden behind every smile. I'm not gonna be too busy for you anymore. I figured out what my actual priorities are way later than I should have, but I did.
I
Part
swear.
of that is being someone you could actually count on again, so my door is always open.
The truth is,
Since you've been here, I finally started to see future. I've started to see a future I want to have. I've thought about it more and more, and it keeps coming back to the same thing. I don't want to be this far away from you. That was it. All along, the entire time you'd been staying with him, and even before you'd actually arrived, those were the words Derek had been holding back. He didn't restrain them any longer. I was hoping to be closer to you when I lived in the next city over. Being neighbors was my dream. I wasn't totally kidding about that. But I wasted all the years we had being at a manageable travel distance from each other. I pushed off facing you for real until I reached a perpetually moving goalpost.
I just.
I regret that. I still do. I don't know if it'll ever stop pissing me off. Derek caught that his long-hid anger began to carry him. He squeezed his eyes shut and forced a shaky, though steadying exhale out. That's not what matters, though. I can't redo the past. I've got to focus on what I can do. And what is that? I could move. I could live next to you now. The clawing darkness of the past faded under the shining hope of a better tomorrow. Why not, right? It's not as if I'd be canceling any amazing plans. I gave up everything before you got here. So this would be the best time for it. I don't have to renew my lease, and the career ideas I do have could come with me. I can start them somewhere else. Or I know you're next to Cove, but if you've been wanting to come back to this area for more than a vacation, I could keep the apartment and you could move in. Maybe he'd want to move closer too, but I'd be up for whatever you are. We could be there for each other day by day. For the first time, Derek had expressed the whole and honest truth of what he wanted for his life, for himself. It wasn't about his family or only for your sake. But even then, Derek couldn't help compromising his preferences. He doubted the appeal of his hopes to anyone other than himself.
Don't worry
I
about
get
that.
if you think it'd be overkill or you'll still worry about how it worked out. It wouldn't have to be forever. He winked, cheeky and familiar. I'm not asking you to marry me again. Maybe it last for only a year and then we'll have new plans. I'm gonna need time to figure out the long term either way. So that's it. Derek's new plan. What do you think? One critic. You don't need to find a place. You can live with me. It was obvious. As soon as he'd said it, you questioned why it took this long to realize you could simply be near each other if you wanted. And the next instant, you remembered why. Neither of you pictured the other feeling the same way. You imagine that Derek was pursuing his sports dreams and never would have interrupted that. He saw himself as unworthy of others' acceptance until an abstract level of success was attained. But those days were behind both of you. The answer you gave and the dazzling smile it gave Derek was proof of it.
Really?
Really? You nodded with complete resolve. There wasn't any need for doubt. Absolutely, Derek Suarez. His arms shot up as he whooped a victorious cheer. Unfortunately, the Ferris wheel car wasn't built for that kind of a celebration. His fists cracked directly against the metal ceiling of the cabin. But he laughed heartily, shaking off his smarting knuckles. Nothing was gonna bring him down. He started to ramble off, moving logistics and preparations that need to be made. Informing the landlord that he wouldn't be renewing his lease was paramount, but he was positive she wouldn't mind. Most of what he had was still packed from his prior move, so that would make the process easier. And once again, he expressed gratefulness that he hadn't furnished the apartment himself. It was dry, grown-up responsibility stuff, yet it sparked more excitement in you than any amusement park could have. Derek was able to rein in the frenzied babbling long enough to extend a hand towards you intently. You understood what he meant by that. The place, the time of that, the terms, so much of situation was entirely different from the first time Derek had made you an offer, but the feelings behind it remained the same. The earnest desire to not be separated. You took hold of one another securely and shook.
It's a deal.
It's a deal. Deal. Wow. He slowly let you go before staring down at his hand in wide-eyed disbelief, as if it wasn't his. But it was. Derek had taken his own life into that hand of his. You believed he wouldn't lose hold of it ever again. I actually did it. His scuffed fingers curled into a fist. Then he lifted his intense green eyes to your face. Derek had grown, and he'd held himself back. He'd changed, and he'd remained himself. He developed it into an adult he should be proud of, and he was still the boy you met 10 years ago. It was all true at once, and it made you happier than you could say. I'm feeling better about the future already. Thanks, Faye. Derek had gained genuine confidence. He trusted his own decisions now that they were made to seek the best instead of to hide it from the worst. Nothing in the world was more heartening than that. I am too, Derek. Derek satisfyingly stretched out his arms in front of him. He'd learned his lesson about moving them higher. Well, I might not really know what I'm doing with my own life, but I've at least got a first step. I've got to get packing. I can settle more of it later. You shook it. You shook with the swaying of your personal cabin and of laughter too. Derek snickered himself, but clung to a piece of the prior seriousness.
Phew.
It is a relief, though. Feeling good about what's coming next is more than I had a few days ago. And 23 is not that old. There's plenty of time left to work it out. I absolutely agree.
You know it.
Then I know I've got it right, if you think it's smart. For the first time in his walking hours, Derek was completely at peace with himself. You kissed his lips. You pressed a sweet, feather-like kiss on the corner of his soft mouth. Derek's breath flicked your face when he snorted. The kiss had tickled him, literally and metaphorically. Still, he kept you close to him, wrapping a heavy arm around your shoulders. Derek was there with you, and you with him. For that you are grateful.
Well.
Hey, Faye? His voice was a gentle whisper. It was as if you were still laying on the couch, half asleep and lost in nothing more than a dream. Does this count as our second date? You pick. It's Derek's day. He smooched your cheek, snickers slipping through his lip. I'd say we're doing pretty good at this relationship thing. Me too, Derek.
Congrats.
Another good idea to add to the list. Your spirits had flown straight to the moon like a pair of shooting stars. Though physically you were still in the gently drifting cabin, and its position was on the decline. The ride came to its end. You were ready for that, and whatever else you'd inevitably face. You had a teammate at your side to tackle life's challenges with. When your cabin arrived at the bottom, you took your turn to dismount. The same attendant gestured toward the tall-framed exit gate and thanked you for coming. Doing as instructed, you left the Ferris wheel behind you. Derek took wide, peppy steps to clear the way for the next passengers to get through.
Whoa.
Then he abruptly came to a complete halt. What time is it again? I completely forgot that was probably gonna have to be our last stop. He was glancing all around, as if he'd be able to spot a clock floating in the air with enough persistence. Eventually, he recalled he owned a cell phone. You discreetly chuckled while he dug it out of his sweatpants pocket. Yup, we've gotta go. We might be pushing it a little already. We've got people to see. Derek shoved his phone back into its place with a terse sigh. The second I have fun, being responsible goes out the window. I'm sorry. Hey, it's not like I was doing any better, and we were both enjoying ourselves. No one's gonna be mad. Thanks, you're great. I won't waste time worrying about wasting time, right? Exactly. Let's head out. Together you bounded across the boardwalk one last time. The energy still filling the area was thrilling, and the rush made it easier to leave it behind. Soon you were packed into Derek's car and on the long trip to your second home after having made the most of the afternoon you got. On the long drive back from the park, there were moments of conversation and of quiet, of reminiscing about the past and imaginations of the future. Of course, the now upcoming move was a major source of discussion. You decided to announce it to everyone while they were all together. The decision had been made, so there was no reason to hide it. Sitting in the passenger seat over those hours, you sometimes felt as if you hadn't left that Ferris wheel cabin in the sky. The atmosphere of Derek's car had a similar way about it that made you feel disconnected from the rest of the world. No one else could reach you or him, and you could say anything there. But there was a major difference. The peace and comfortable stasis was only an illusion. You weren't on the slow, unchanging path of the park ride. Derek was speeding down a California highway in a race against time. There was a party at the end of the road, and Derek was never one to be late. When you finally pulled in the apartment complex's the parking lot, the car was silent. Its leg of the relay was over, and the frantic whirl and rush had to be carried on with your own flesh and bones. Not a moment was wasted snatching up the few belongings you'd brought along and booking it towards the building. You passed no one in the halls. Derek had his key in hand already, prepared to unlock the door, and when that was swung open, you saw the living room you'd grown so accustomed to empty. The space was untouched since you'd left early that morning, at least as far as you could remember. But Derek didn't celebrate an early victory. He put a finger to his lips and made a show of checking behind the couch and around the kitchen counter, just to make certain his family hadn't used their spare keys to prepare another surprise. You trailed behind Derek step for step as he dramatically skulked about his own house. He checked around the corner and you tried to get a look over his broad shoulders to see too. Nicholas and Liz could absolutely not be trusted. If they came by the apartment and found you and Derek gone, they would almost certainly play the same joke twice. However, they hadn't gotten that chance. Derek stood tall and concluded his inspection with that revelation. "We've done it. No one is here. We spent the whole day out and still beat them." With a cheer, he fully relished the victory now that it was truly assured.
Man.
A boardwalk date with Faye, being on time, and getting to see the family before the day's over. Things really are going my way, huh? It's perfect. Derek saying the day was perfect made it so for you too. After a lifetime of compromises and sacrifices, you are proud to see him get exactly what he wanted. And it was more than a little thrilling that a significant part of what he wanted was you. "I'm so glad we got to do this." "Yeah." His voice was gentle and his gaze soft with affection. But as Derek came nearer to you, the warmth shot up to sultry with a single spark it would burst. You're a
You're
great girlfriend.
seriously
I hope
great.
you know. You couldn't look away from his fixed gaze, but became incredibly aware of his fingers trailing down your arm. Liz had been so certain none of the Suarez men could woo anyone. She would have had to eat those words if she ever saw Derek truly put his mind to it. It's my pleasure. In fact, I'd be happy to do more. It was only fair to flirt back a little with how strong he was coming on, yet the reply made his lips quirk. He doubted his ears and nearly lost his composure. What he didn't do was quit. He didn't tell himself or you he was wrong or there was a mistake either. Instead, Derek held up his coy smile with the confidence he'd managed to store away for emergencies and indulged in further romantic pursuits. Honestly,
Well,
right now, all I really want is to be alone with you. Once again, he closed in on you, this time until you were near enough that your noses almost touched. It's pretty it's pretty convenient. We've got the place to ourselves for a minute, huh? We better make the most of it while we can. Derek had played it very cool, but in that instant, he lit right up, a glow from his head to toe. He threaded his fingers through yours and gripped it tight. The hand was steady and hot. There wasn't a trace of pre-game jitters, only excitement.